Isn't it wonderful? Here we are, spiritual beings living in a human body. And is there anybody here who has never had a human experience? So I'm having a human experience. The trick of it is, don't let the human experience get you down. So today's talk is based about gratitude. So what I wanted to do is, first of all, I want to make sure I'm in the right place. I am. Okay. Our founder, Ernest Holmes, says, in completing a spiritual mind treatment, which is our form of prayer, 5 steps, always give thanks as if we're already objectified or done. A thankful heart is in harmony with it. So when we do a prayer, we do the prayer for the end result, and we know that it's done, and we release it to the law, and the law takes care of it, and we say, thank you kindly. Now, Jesus' method was about the same. During his ministry, it was to give thanks and then command the law to work in everything, giving thanks. So I want to make sure I'm in the right audience this morning, so I have some questions for you, okay? Are you up for this? Okay. How many of you are suffering from great pain from starvation? None. Oh. How many people are suffering from freezing each day? How many people have no potable water to drink? Drinkable water, clear water, unpoisoned water, In many countries, they don't have good water to drink, and then they get all kinds of diseases. And how many of you are in constant threat of war, violence, or disaster? I shouldn't ask that right after an election, should I? And how many live in a constant state of fear because of war or violence near your home? How many have no place to sleep tonight? How many have had no opportunity for education? How many are deathly ill and have no health care? Have no family or friends? Gee, I'm not getting any takers here. How many live in a state of constant severe lack? How many have absolutely nothing to be grateful for? No takers, right? Imagine the world that we live in. There was a story in the newspaper, and it was about a man, a homeless man, who was hungry, cold, and living with poor health. He had no family, and appeared that he had no one to love him. It's heartbreaking to see anybody like that, who seems to be so abandoned by society and has no home and no love and no caringness. You might think the man gave up hope. He might become bitter, angry, depressed, and even lonely, because his life appeared to have dealt him a bad hand, right? Now this man, every day, made a point to go and feed the birds. And he would find crumbs or foods that he could find in the trash, or if some good Samaritan gave him some food, he would take some of the food and give it to the birds. So he was asked how he felt about being homeless, and this is what he replied. I have the air in my lungs, and I'm grateful for everything I have been blessed with, but most important, I am grateful for 3 things. 1, that I'm alive. 2, that I have the ability to love. And with tears starting to fill his eyes, his 3rd gratitude was that I have my beloved birds. So despite his desperate circumstances, he chose to live in gratitude and love, and he is still thankful to be alive. And the very little that he has, he shares with the birds. And how many of us would just pass the birds by? How many of us take for granted our health, our home, our clean clothes, our family, our freedom, the fresh foods we eat, the lack of worry that we have in most instances? You might say that we are blessed. I took a trip down to Mexico and had to take a bus ride down down to Ensenada on the port. And on the ride down, it was an amazing contrast. As you would drive along, you would see these white mansions of the non-Mexican people there. And then right next to you, you would see these shacks, barely built well enough to even sustain them, to protect them from the weather. And you see this great contrast, and I was watching this great contrast all the way down. Then I thought about the fact that in our civilization, we're told that 60 people own 50% of the wealth of the world. The wealth of the world is enough to provide hunger, shelter, medical care, housing, anything that any of us need if the wealth of the world were distributed. As a matter of fact, if it were distributed, there would be more than enough funds for everyone to have really whatever they wanted. Well, somewhere along the line, people forgot about gratitude. And the problem that you get caught up with in money is that you have to say to the trillionaire or the billionaire or the millionaire, when do you have enough? And you know what their answer is? Never. They never have enough. But when do we have enough that we can be grateful? We can look at what we don't have, or we can look at what we do have. Oprah Winfrey said, be thankful for what you have, you'll end up having more. If you concentrate on what you don't have, you will never, ever have enough. Well, what's the difference between the prosperous person and the poor person? It is our birthright to be prosperous. That's our birthright. It is our birthright to be unconditionally loved, too. We are first and foremost spiritual beings having this human experience to learn things in life and to evolve and to move on. But what happens is we get caught up in life and we forget who we are primarily. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the greatest blocks to prosperity. The first greatest block to prosperity is the inability to receive. There was a biblical message in Acts. Paul was talking to the community. He wasn't even preaching. He was talking to the community. And he said, I do my work and I earn money, and I don't need the church to pay me, and I contribute because and then he said, because as Jesus says, it's better to give than to receive. I cannot imagine Jesus saying that. It's a lot more fun to give than to receive sometimes, and sometimes it's vice versa. But when you come down to the basic laws of the universe, we have the law of reciprocity. And the law of reciprocity says that everything is in balance. And for us, the giving and the receiving have to be in balance. So you might ask yourself, why is it so hard for so many people to receive? And myself included for my first 50 or 60 years. And what happens with many of us, we get in situations where we're forced to receive. So for me, a number of years ago, I came down with cancer, and the daughter and my sweetie had to take care of me, and I was totally dependent for 4 months. And then you have to open the doors to receiving. Well, we have been programmed to not receive readily. Wow, think about that one. If we have been programmed to not receive readily, how are our arms open to receive our prosperity and our abundance? So somebody says, let me buy you lunch. Oh, no, no, no. Why not? Why not? Why don't you give the person the joy of buying that lunch for you? Or if somebody says, oh, I'll take you there. Oh, no, I don't want to put you through the trouble. You know what people sometimes say to ministers? Oh, I don't want to take your time. What do you think we're here for? Our job is service. Service, service. I was in the hospital the other day, and one of the people said, oh, I feel guilty taking your time. I said, this is what I'm here for. And they said, well, yeah, you retired. You never retire from the minister. And you never retire from your own individual spirituality either. So each person is a spiritual being. Now, we are all equal. There's nobody greater or less than another. And if Jesus were standing next to me, or Ernest Holmes, or Buddha, or Krishna, or whoever, they would agree. Because in the eyes of the divine, every one of its creations is magnificent and perfect. Yet, how do we see ourselves? How do we see ourselves? Well, we've been taught, don't take. What did we were always told? Don't brag. Well, there's a big difference between bragging and, like if you go for a job interview, you have to paint a picture of what your abilities are. And I remember interviewing in El Paso, and I was totally confident because the job was perfect for me. They wanted somebody who was an expert in COBOL. So they said to me, how are you in COBOL? And I said, oh, I'm an expert in COBOL. And they said, how are you in SQL, Oracle? And I said, oh, I've only been in SQL about 3 years, so I'm nowhere near as proficient there. And they said, oh, we don't care about that. What we're looking for is an expert in COBOL. So I didn't have to pretend to be something I wasn't. And that job worked out perfectly. So one of the biggest blocks to our prosperity is the way that we perceive ourselves. And the reason we don't perceive ourselves in the correct way is because we perceive ourselves through the eyes of what we were taught as children. And how many people in here were unconditionally loved by both parents and absolutely know it? How many people? How many people? We have 2 hands, 3 hands. I did a workshop one time in which I had 87 people, and I said, how many people in here have been absolutely know that they were unconditionally loved by both parents? 3 hands went up. I knew all 3 people. Not true. 0 hands out of 87. Does that tell you something? Now, how many of you have had the experience of the oneness? Okay. In the experience of the oneness, do you feel the unconditional love of the loving source for you? Okay. Do you get the impression that it thinks there's something wrong with you? Does it see you like you're the most beautiful, magnificent thing in the universe? Yes. Well, who's the greater voice for learning that, or what we've had as children, or in school, or from siblings, or from history, or whatever? The way we're going to change this world is by changing ourselves. And the way we change ourselves is by coming back to the truth within ourselves. When I had until the time I had the experience of the oneness, I had no idea what it was like. But after I had it, I couldn't stop sobbing for 20 minutes afterwards. Just sobbed, sobbed, sobbed. It was so beautiful and so magnificent. To think that anybody or anything could love me so purely, so free of judgment, and just the way I was, all screwed up at 43. And I mean screwed up at 43. And so what I learned was that what was greater, my mind in judging me and not accepting me, or the mind of Father, Mother, God in loving me unconditionally? Well, that was not a difficult question to answer, was it? Yes. Have you asked yourself that question? Yes. See, the way we're going to change this world is by learning to love ourselves. And people get caught up and think, oh, that can become very egotistical. Well, actually, it becomes very humbling. Because when you begin to love yourself, you begin to accept yourself just the way you are. Just the way you are. How would you like it if somebody could accept you just the way you are? How would you feel? How would you feel? Wonderful, right? Well, look in a mirror. Look in a mirror. That's where it starts. It starts at home. And it's like a magic. The hope for this world lies in the individual healing themselves. No government's going to save us. It's the individual rising up and changing the consciousness of this planet. But how can we change the consciousness of this planet from hate and division and the negativity, the greed and so forth that we see now if we're locked into the same fears? We can't. And so it is time for all of us to move and change. And as we begin to love ourselves and accept ourselves, we don't have to perform for other people. We don't have to be special. We don't have to be different. We can just be ourselves. Well, my God, that's what we were brought here for. We were brought here to express God through us as itself. So right now I am up here expressing God through Jack as God. That's my purpose. And that's your purpose sitting there. And we're also here to learn and experience. Because from this learning and experience, we will be able to teach others in different ways. So let's go back to gratitude. Gratitude starts with appreciation. Now, I happen to live on a golf course looking out on a lake. I mean, it's terrible residence, right? And I see the ducks and the bunnies and the herons and the hawks and all the other animals. But every morning I get up and I look out and I just say, oh, thank you, Father, Mother, God. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'm not just thanking it for what I see. I'm thanking it for the people who came into my life who helped me to change. I'm thanking the person who, when I said, what do you do for depression at 43, said to me, oh, read this book, Creative Mind and Success by Ernest Holmes. Thank you, Ernest Holmes. God, I am so grateful for that man because he got me on the spiritual path. And every day I am grateful. And the beauty of Ernest Holmes is he gave us an open-ended spiritual teaching. It's open-ended. Too many teachings are locked into a box. With the Science of Mind teachings, you can move into the true spiritual teachings of learning to become the spiritual being that you are. So prosperity is a natural byproduct when a person takes on the spiritual attributes of humbleness, ability to give, ability to receive, understanding that you are already one with God and you're inseparable. And I know a lot of people have some negative attitudes about politics in the world and so forth. So I want to give you a little ray of hope. Would you like a little ray of hope? All right. 15 years ago, I was teaching a class, and we were talking about spiritual mind treatment. And so in the class, I would do a prayer for each person. So I went up in front of a woman like Ronnie here. That's what happened. That's what happened. I could barely do the prayer. She's crying. And I finished the prayer, and I didn't tell her what happened. But the next day she called me up and she said, Jack, I wanted to tell you why I was crying. She said, that was the first time in my life I ever experienced the God presence in another person. Well, it was the first time in my life I had ever experienced the God presence in another person. That was 15 years ago. Since then it has been growing. Well, this past week, it took a mammoth jump. I was having coffee with a friend, and I went up to get a refill, and I was walking past a waitress. I'd never seen her before, and, just waitress. And I said hi, and she said, "Good morning." And out of nowhere, I felt the God in her, like I have never felt in my life. I couldn't breathe for the next 2 minutes. When I went back to the table, my friend said to me, "Are you okay?" I said, "Oh, I'm great. I'm great." But it was just so overwhelming. So why do I tell you this story? The reason I tell it to you is because if one changes, another changes. And then another changes, and another changes, and another changes. And let me ask you, how many of you notice that you are feeling the presence more frequently and more strongly? How many? Yes, look at that. Look at that. Is this world going to change? Yes. Yes. You see, because when we learn to love unconditionally, we rise to that unconditional love level. And a person at the unconditional love level offsets the negativity of 2.7 million people below 200. And 200 is the negative scale. Are you changing the world by sitting there in that body? Yes. Yes, we are changing the world. Now, I want to give you a homework assignment. And it's a simple one. Every time that you go to bless your food, I want you to just say, "I call in all the higher beings to join me in blessing this food, blessing the earth, blessing all life on earth, and blessing the spirit of earth, our beloved Gaia. Thank you, thank you, thank you." And let that be your prayer 3 times a day. Can you imagine the energies that go out from an unconditionally loving heart? And when you take this number and then you join together with others and the exponential effect, yes, we can change this world. We can change our life by taking on the attitude of gratitude, and we can change this world by taking the gifts that we already have and sharing them on a daily basis with the world. You can go out there and you can participate actively in whichever way you do. That just isn't my role. My role is what I'm doing. And my role is in the privacy of my own being to do my prayers. I want to tell you one other thing. There's a Canadian honker family that comes in every year on the lake by my house. 7 of them. And when they come by, I go out and I talk to them and they stop. So I was standing at the window the other day, and they, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all in this beautiful row, right? And so I looked at them and I said, "We send you love and blessings. We send you love and blessings. We send you love and blessings." They all stopped. "We send you love and blessings. We send you love and blessings." They all turned and faced me. And they stood facing me until I finished the prayer. Do you think that animals are not sentient? Do you think animals are not part of the oneness? Absolutely. Absolutely. So for your homework assignment, I want you to take that love full of unconditional love, heart full of unconditional love that you have, and do these prayers several times a day for the planet and the people and Gaia and the earth itself. Everybody willing to do that? Okay, then let's close with a prayer. Ready? Beautiful loving source, wondrous God of my being, your holy presence fills this room. Your love is indescribable. There is nothing on this planet at this point to compare. And yet it is evolving, because I know that you, the one, the Father, Mother, God, through us, are changing this planet and turning it back into the kind of world that it should be. I recognize I am one with the loving source, and so is everyone here. With a great humbleness, I recognize the God presences that sit before me and that make my heart bow in humbleness of recognition. And from that point of recognition and realizing that I and we are one with the infinite intelligence, love, and power of the universe, I decree that divine light, love, and peace are surrounding and filling this planet and the people in it. It is saturating their hearts, their minds, their spirits, their lives, their businesses, their homes, their families, their entities, the totality of what they are. And I and we, not only we here, but all the heavenly beings also, decree that it is peace and light and love that fill us and fill this planet. And that we are moving into a time of rising up in this planet, but a time of love, a time of peace, a time of reverence. It is with unimaginable gratitude that I know the higher beings send us their love directly into our hearts. And it's their way of saying, your prayer has been heard, it has been done, it will be done. I give thanks for myself and everyone here, knowing it to be so, and so it is. If you don't mind, I want to read you a poem before I wrap up, because I want this talk to end on a particular note. This is a poem I wrote a while back. It's called Gratitude and Joy. There is a law in this universe that says we attract what we hold in our attitude. This law is automatic, absolute, and precise, and gives no one any latitude. The very thoughts you entertain in your mind function to make you free or to make you bound. The predominant thoughts of your mind will raise you to the heavens or crash you to the ground. You may think your thoughts and attitudes are private, but the law takes them all seriously. And the cumulative effect of those various thoughts ends up being what you will see. If you're walking around with a negative attitude toward most of the things in life, then you can bet your money that you're going to see lots of strife in your life. So make a point to start each day with happy thoughts and heartfelt prayers of gratitude and joy, and the gifts of Spirit will so greatly bless you, you will say,